The Vogue Fashion Summit was the pinnacle event of the season. A glittering constellation of designers, models, and industry elite gathered in the soaring glass atrium of the Lux Tower. Asha Sharma clutched her handmade portfolio against her chest, feeling the rapid drumming of her heart beneath it. Her simple cotton dress, carefully selected as her best outfit, felt painfully out of place among the sea of couture and designer labels. "Excuse me, are you lost? Staff entrance is around back," a voice cut through her thoughts. Vivienne Blackwood, creative director of Luxe Fashion House and owner of half the building, looked down at Asha through narrowed eyes, a champagne flute dangling between manicured fingers. I'm an invited designer," Asha managed, holding up her invitation card, the emerging talent showcase. Vivienne's perfect eyebrows arched. How quaint." She extended a lacquered nail toward Asha's portfolio. "May I?" Before Asha could respond, Vivienne snatched the handcrafted leather binder and began flipping through it carelessly, her expression shifting from mild curiosity to thinly veiled disgust. "This is what you call fashion, embroidered cotton, sustainable fabrics," she laughed, the sound cutting through the ambient chatter like glass. "How provincial." The crowd around them had grown still, all eyes watching the interaction. Phone cameras were already pointed their way. "These designs are from my heritage collection," Asha said, her voice surprisingly steady despite the humiliation creeping up her neck. "They blend traditional Indian techniques with—" "Darling," Vivienne interrupted, dropping the portfolio to the marble floor where pages scattered like autumn leaves. "This isn't some charity bazaar. This is fashion, real fashion." She gestured toward her own slick, minimalist designs adorning several attendees. "Not whatever village craft project you've brought." The first flash went off, someone capturing the moment that would soon go viral. Asha Sharma crouched on the floor, desperately gathering her life's work while Vivienne towered above her, laughing. "Security," Vivienne called with a dismissive wave. "Please escort this enthusiast back to wherever she came from. Obviously, there's been some mistake with the invitations." As strong hands grasped her shoulders, Asha caught a glimpse of her reflection in the polished floor, tears threatening, cheeks burning with shame. She had saved for years for this opportunity, only to be discarded like last season's trends. What Vivienne Blackwood couldn't know, as she watched Asha being marched toward the exit, was that among the onlookers quietly observing the scene was an elegant older woman in a simple yet impeccably tailored suit, her silver hair pulled back in a sleek bun. Indira Sharma, Asha's aunt, had flown in as a surprise to support her niece's debut. She watched the scene unfold with narrowed eyes, her expression unreadable as she pulled out her phone and made a brief call. "Gerald," she said quietly into the receiver, "I found something I want to acquire. Immediately." 6 years earlier, Asha sat cross-legged on the floor of her Aunt Indira's sunlit Delhi apartment, carefully stitching glass beads onto indigo fabric. Her aunt's apartment was modest but elegant, much like Indira herself. Few people knew that this unassuming woman had built a quiet fortune through strategic investments across Asia and Europe. "The secret to success isn't flash, child," Indira often told her. "It's patience and quality. Let your work speak for itself." Asha had lived by those words, working tirelessly at the prestigious Radha Institute of Design under the mentorship of Samir Kapoor, then India's leading fashion innovator. Her star had risen quickly, too quickly for some. "You have real talent," Samir had told her one night as they worked late in the studio. "But you need connections to make it in this industry. I can introduce you to people, for a price." When Asha refused his advances, the retaliation was swift. Designs disappeared. Credit for her work went to others, particularly to Riya Malhotra, once Asha's closest friend, who said nothing as Samir presented Asha's breakthrough sustainable silk technique as Riya's innovation. "I had no choice," Riya had whispered when Asha confronted her. "This is how the industry works. You either play along or get left behind." The final blow came when Samir sabotaged Asha's thesis presentation, claiming she had plagiarized concepts from established designers. No amount of evidence could overcome his influence. The institute quietly asked her to leave to avoid scandal. "You'll never work in fashion again," Samir had promised as security escorted her from the building. "Not in Delhi, not in Mumbai, not anywhere that matters." Asha had returned to her aunt's apartment, devastated but not defeated. "When someone tries to bury you," Indira had said, handing her a cup of chai and a plane ticket to New York, "they don't realize you're a seed. Go where you can grow." So Asha had come to America with nothing but her skills and determination. She'd taken odd jobs, alterations at dry cleaners, costume work for small theaters, while saving every penny and building her collection in the cramped Brooklyn apartment she shared with 3 other immigrants. For 5 years, she had worked, saved, and dreamed of the day she would re-enter the fashion world on her own terms. The Vogue Fashion Summit invitation had seemed like destiny, an emerging designer showcase that didn't require sponsorship or connections, just raw talent and innovation. Asha had poured everything into her application, sending her best pieces and most innovative concepts. When the acceptance email came, she had cried with joy, calling her aunt immediately. "I knew you would bloom again," Indira had said simply. "Send me the details, I'll be watching." What Asha hadn't known was that her aunt meant this literally, that Indira had already booked her flight, determined to witness her niece's triumphant return. Now, as Asha rode the subway back to Brooklyn, mascara streaking her cheeks, her phone began to buzz incessantly. Her humiliation had already gone viral, #fashion fraud trending alongside clips of Vivienne Blackwood destroying her credibility with surgical precision. She didn't answer when her aunt called. How could she explain that she had failed again? By morning, the mockery had reached fever pitch. Asha's phone screen shattered under the weight of notifications as she scrolled through the carnage. "Who let this street vendor into Vogue?" read one comment under a particularly unflattering photo. "Vivienne is savage, Village Craft Project, I'm dead skull," said another. Fashion blogs had picked up the story with gleeful cruelty. Fashion faux pas, wannabe designer CRASHES elite event. Even worse were the private messages from former classmates back in India, screenshots forwarded by people she'd once considered friends. "See what happens when you don't play by the rules," Ria had written alongside a laughing emoji. "Samir was right about you." Asha dragged herself to her shift at the alterations shop, only to find her boss holding up his phone with the viral video playing. "You didn't tell me you were going to the summit," he said, looking both impressed and concerned. "That's Vivienne Blackwood. She owns half of Manhattan's fashion district." "Not anymore," came a familiar voice from behind the counter. Asha whirled around to find her Aunt Indira standing there, immaculate in a simple linen suit, silver hair gleaming under the shop's fluorescent lights. "Auntie, what are you doing here?" "Cleaning up a mess," Indira replied calmly. "You weren't answering your phone." Before Asha could explain, the bell above the door jingled. A security guard entered, followed by Vivienne Blackwood herself, looking thunderous. She pointed at Asha, "your little stunt is going to cost me. My people have been fielding calls all morning about bullying and elitism, as if I owe space to every amateur with a sewing machine." Asha felt her knees weaken, but before she could speak, Indira stepped between them. "Ms. Blackwood, I presume," her aunt's voice was cool as glacier water, "I believe you're trespassing." Vivienne gave a dismissive snort. "I own a controlling interest in this building. I own most of this block, actually, and I'm here to ensure this person understands that her pathetic attempt at attention-seeking has consequences." "Interesting timing," Indira replied, withdrawing an envelope from her handbag. "Because as of 9 a.m. this morning, ownership of this property has changed hands, as has your Lux Tower." She handed the envelope to Vivienne, whose manicured hands trembled slightly as she opened it. Her eyes widened as she scanned the contents. "This is impossible," she whispered. "The Lux Tower isn't for sale." "Everything is for sale at the right price," Indira smiled pleasantly. "Jameson Holdings was quite amenable to my offer, particularly when I mentioned I'd be bringing in new management for their anchor tenant." The security guard shifted uncomfortably. Asha's boss had backed against the wall, watching the scene unfold with undisguised fascination. "You can't touch Lux Fashion House," Vivienne spat. "I have contracts protections." "Indeed you do," Indira nodded, "for another 30 days, after which your lease comes up for renewal, at my discretion." For the first time, genuine fear flickered across Vivienne's perfect features. "Who are you?" "I'm Indira Sharma," she said simply. "Asha's aunt. Now please leave my building before I have you escorted out. We have an establishment to renovate." As Vivienne stormed out, the bell jangling violently in her wake, Asha turned to her aunt in shock. "Auntie, what have you done?" Indira's stern expression softened. What I should have done years ago, given you the platform you deserve. Now shall we go upstairs? I believe the penthouse office has an excellent view of your new design studio. 3 weeks later, the fashion world buzzed with rumors about Vivienne Blackwood's sudden fall from grace and the mysterious new owner of the Lux Tower. Speculation ran wild. A Saudi prince, a tech billionaire, a Chinese conglomerate. No one suspected the elegant older woman who sat quietly in the former Lux fashion house headquarters, now renamed Indigo Design Collective, as workers removed Vivienne's iconic V logo from the lobby. "Are you sure about this, Auntie?" Asha asked, surveying the gutted space. "It's such a risk." "Business is always a risk," Indira replied, signing another document presented by her assistant. "But backing true talent is the surest investment I know." The risk had been calculated. While Vivienne had been publicly humiliating Asha, Indira had been making calls, examining financial records, and discovering that Lux's empire was built on shaky ground. Overextended credit, missed deadlines, and declining quality masked by Vivienne's carefully cultivated image and ruthless intimidation tactics. Ms. Sharma, a young woman, appeared in the office doorway. "The tech team has recovered the files you requested." "What files?" Asha asked as a man wheeled in a cart of hard drives. Indira smiled. Vivienne was careless with her digital security. Her company email was linked to her personal accounts, including the ones she used to threaten smaller designers and suppliers. The tech assistant, Julian, opened a laptop. "It's all here, evidence that she stole designs from at least 8 independent designers in the past 3 years. She'd approached them for collaboration, then claimed their work as her own." He pulled up screenshots of Vivienne's conversations with fashion journalists, promises of exclusive access in exchange for burying negative stories about her business practices. "And this," Julian continued, playing an audio file of Vivienne instructing her team to source materials from factories using child labor while publicly claiming ethical production. Asha stared at the evidence in horror. "She's been doing this for years and no one stopped her." "People knew," Julian shrugged, "but she had power and they feared her." Indira placed a hand on Asha's shoulder. "Fear only works until someone stands up. Tomorrow, at the emergency board meeting of the Fashion Federation, you will show them this evidence." "Me?" Asha's voice cracked. "They won't listen to me. I'm nobody." "You are the rightful owner of Indigo Design Collective, which now controls 20% of Manhattan's fashion real estate," Indira corrected. "They will listen." Before Asha could protest further, her phone pinged with a message. It was from Ria, her former friend from design school. "Is it true? You own Lux Tower now?" Samir is freaking out. Attached was a screenshot of Samir's social media post, frantically damage controlling as rumors spread about Vivienne's downfall being connected to her treatment of an Indian designer. He was claiming to have always supported Asha, rewriting their history in real time. For the first time since her humiliation, Asha smiled. "I think I'm ready for that board meeting, Auntie." The Federation of American Fashion Design occupied a converted warehouse in the garment district, its brick walls hung with portraits of industry legends. The emergency board meeting had drawn a capacity crowd. Everyone who was anyone had come to witness Vivienne Blackwood's defense against the mysterious new owner of her empire. Vivienne arrived in characteristic style, Chanel suit, security detail, legal team trailing behind with briefcases and grim expressions. She swept through the room, accepting sympathetic touches on her arm from allies, ignoring the whispers that followed in her wake. When Asha entered wearing a simple hand-embroidered silk jacket over black trousers, the whispers turned to murmurs of recognition. This was the woman from the viral video, the one Vivienne had humiliated. "This is absurd," Vivienne announced as the meeting was called to order. "I'm being targeted by a vindictive amateur with a wealthy benefactor. My reputation, my life's work is under attack based on rumor and manipulated evidence." "If I may," Asha stepped forward, placing a flash drive on the central table. "This isn't about my humiliation. This is about truth." The Federation's president, Eleanor Montgomery, a dignified woman who had seen fashion empires rise and fall over 4 decades, nodded for the presentation to begin. What followed was damning beyond dispute. On screen after screen, Vivienne's own words condemned her. Emails to factories in Bangladesh ordering them to remove safety labels. Messages to young designers whose concepts appeared in her collections soon after, with no credit or compensation. Financial records showing systematic underpayment to immigrant seamstresses. And finally, a video from Asha's own time at design school, security footage showing Samir Kapoor accepting a large envelope from a representative of Vivienne's company, days before he accused Asha of plagiarism. Ms. Blackwood has spent years building her empire by destroying others, Asha concluded. I am just one of many she stepped on. The difference is, I had someone who believed in me enough to help me stand up again. She gestured to where Indira sat quietly at the back of the room. And now I'm standing for all of us. One by one, people began to rise from their seats. A young designer from Detroit whose children's wear concept had appeared in Vivienne's collection after a mentoring session. A former luxe pattern maker who had been fired after questioning the origin of certain designs. A model who had been blacklisted for refusing Vivienne's demand to lose dangerous amounts of weight. Vivienne's face had gone ashen, her legal team frantically whispering among themselves. This is a witch hunt, she finally managed, her voice brittle. You have nothing but circumstantial evidence and disgruntled employees. Actually, Alina Montgomery spoke for the first time. We have subpoenas. She nodded to two individuals who had been sitting quietly in the corner. The Department of Labor has been investigating wage theft allegations, and the FBI has interest in your offshore accounts. As the federal agents approached Vivienne, the room erupted in chaos. Cameras flashed, voices rose, and in the center of it all, Vivienne Blackwood finally lost her legendary composure. You think you've won? She snarled at Asha across the table. This industry will eat you alive. You're nothing, a village girl playing dress-up in the big city. Asha stood her ground, unflinching. Maybe, but at least my designs are my own. The headlines the next morning were merciless. Fashion fraud, Blackwood empire built on stolen DSIGNS. Lux House of CARDS, how Vivienne Blackwood fooled the fashion world. Ethical fashion advocate exposed as labor exploiter. Vivienne's carefully curated social media accounts went dark. Her celebrity clients began issuing carefully worded statements distancing themselves from her brand. Retailers pulled Lux merchandise from their floors overnight. In the Lux Tower, now officially renamed Indigo Tower, Asha watched the collapse from the office that had once been Vivienne's sanctuary. The white marble desk where Vivienne had signed contracts and destroyed careers was now covered with Asha's fabric samples and design sketches. Ms. Sharma, her new assistant, called from the doorway. There's a situation in the lobby. Downstairs, Asha found a crowd of former Lux employees gathered uncertainly. At their head stood Marco, Vivienne's former creative deputy. We don't know if we still have jobs, he explained. No one's told us anything. There are 3 collection deadlines next month and everything's falling apart. Asha looked at the sea of worried faces, seamstresses, pattern makers, marketing staff, assistants. None of them had been part of Vivienne's crimes. They were just people who needed work. Everyone who wants to stay has a place here, she said decisively, but things will be different, transparent sourcing, fair wages, and proper credit for everyone's contributions. A ripple of cautious hope moved through the group. And what about the collections? Marco asked. Buyers are already canceling orders. We start over, Asha replied, not with Vivienne's stolen concepts, but with our own. Everyone in this room has ideas that were suppressed under her leadership. Now they can breathe. As the employees dispersed, Asha felt a presence at her side. Indira watched with quiet approval. You've grown into your power quickly, her aunt observed. I learned from the best, Asha replied. But Auntie, rebuilding this company, creating something ethical from the ruins of Lux, it's going to be difficult. Of course it will, Indira agreed. That's how you'll know it's worthwhile. Outside the tower, Vivienne Blackwood's name was being removed from the building directory. Her lawyers had negotiated a settlement, no jail time in exchange for full cooperation with investigators and significant financial penalties. The woman who had ruled fashion with fear had become a cautionary tale overnight. That evening, as Asha worked late sketching concepts for the new direction of the company, her phone lit up with a message from a number she didn't recognize. You've destroyed my life's work. I hope you're satisfied. V. Asha considered responding, but instead set down her phone and returned to her designs. Some conversations weren't worth having. The real work was what mattered now. 6 months passed like a whirlwind. Where once it stood Luxe Fashion House, a gleaming monument to fast fashion and exploitation, now stood Indigo Collective, a revolutionary approach to fashion that centered sustainability, fair labor, and collaborative design. The atrium that had witnessed Asha's humiliation was now filled with natural light and living plants, the marble floors replaced with sustainable bamboo. In studios throughout the building, designers from diverse backgrounds worked on collections that honored their heritage while pushing boundaries. Ms. Sharma, a young woman in a hijab, approached Asha as she reviewed textile samples. The interns have finished the mock-ups for the heritage collection. Would you like to see them? Lena Hamadi had been one of Vivienne's assistants, perpetually terrified and overworked. Now she coordinated Indigo's internship program with quiet confidence. Absolutely, Asha smiled, following her to where 5 young designers from Detroit, Mexico City, Lagos, Seoul, and the Navajo Nation presented garments that blended their cultural traditions with modern aesthetics. These are extraordinary, Asha said, examining the craftsmanship, especially this embroidery technique. I learned it from my grandmother, the Navajo designer explained, but I never thought it had a place in high fashion until your TED Talk about traditional craftsmanship. Asha's journey from humiliated designer to industry leader had been documented by major media outlets, her speech about ethical fashion viewed millions of times online. But more meaningful than the publicity was the change she was witnessing in real time, young designers who no longer felt they had to whitewash their cultural influences to succeed. Later that afternoon, Asha addressed her full team in the company's open workspace. Fashion Week is 1 month away, she reminded them, but we're not just showing clothes, we're showing a new way forward. Each piece tells a story about where it came from, who made it, and the traditions it honors. Marco, now her creative partner rather than deputy, added, and the Transparency app will launch simultaneously. Customers can scan any garment to see its entire journey, from raw material to runway. As the meeting dispersed, Asha noticed a familiar face hovering at the edges of the room, Ria Malhotra, her former friend from design school, the one who had chosen Samir's favor over their friendship. Ria, what are you doing here? I came to see if the rumors were true, Ria said, looking around the vibrant workspace with undisguised envy. You really did it, you changed everything. Not alone, Asha corrected, and not overnight. Samir lost everything, Ria continued. After the Vivienne scandal, everyone started questioning his practices too. The design school closed last month. Asha felt a complicated mixture of emotions, satisfaction that justice had come, sadness for the students who had lost their educational opportunity. I'm starting over, Ria confessed. I've been freelancing, but it's hard, I thought maybe. She trailed off, the request unspoken but clear. Asha considered the woman before her, once her closest friend, then her betrayer, now humbled and seeking help. The old wound still ached, but holding grudges wouldn't build the future she envisioned. We have a mid-level design position open, she said finally. You'd report to Marco, not me, and you'd start at the beginning like everyone else. Relief washed over Ria's face. Thank you, I won't let you down again. Make sure you don't, Asha said simply before turning back to her work. Second chances were possible, she was living proof of that, but they had to be earned. That night, as Asha and Indira shared dinner in the penthouse apartment that had once been Vivienne's private sanctuary, they watched the sunset paint Manhattan gold. The Fashion Federation called today, Asha mentioned casually. They want me to give the opening address at Fashion Week. Indira smiled. Will you accept? I think so, Asha nodded. Someone needs to speak for those who have been silenced in this industry. Why not someone who knows how it feels? Her aunt raised her glass in a toast, to finding your voice. And using it for others, Asha added, clinking her glass against her aunt's. Fashion Week transformed Bryant Park into a wonderland of innovation. Gone were the days when a single aesthetic dominated the runway. Under Asha's influence as the newly appointed ethics chair of the Fashion Federation, designers from backgrounds previously excluded from high fashion had been given prominent slots in the schedule. Backstage at the Indigo Collective show, organized chaos reigned. Models of all sizes, ages, and ethnicities were being fitted in garments that celebrated both their bodies and the cultural heritage of their creators. 5 minutes, everyone, Marco called, moving through the space with practiced efficiency. Asha stood to the side, watching her vision come to life. Her own collection, Roots and Wings, featured techniques from rural Indian artisans applied to contemporary silhouettes, with QR codes embroidered into each piece linking to videos of the artisans at work. Ms. Sharma, a production assistant, appeared at her elbow. "There's someone here to see you," says she's an old friend. Asha turned to find Vivienne Blackwood standing in the doorway, dramatically different from her former self. Gone was the imperious fashion queen. In her place stood a woman who had aged years in months, her designer clothes replaced by a simple black dress, her once perfect hair now showing gray at the temples. The backstage area went silent, everyone freezing in place at the sight of the disgraced designer. "You shouldn't be here," Asha said quietly. "I know," Vivienne agreed, "but I needed to see it, to see what you built from the ruins of my empire." She gestured at the vibrant collection, the diverse models, the palpable energy of excitement rather than fear. "It's extraordinary, everything I claim to stand for but never actually created." Asha studied the woman who had once embodied her worst nightmare. "Why are you really here, Vivienne?" "To say what I should have said months ago," Vivienne replied, her voice dropping to a near whisper. "I was wrong, about you, about everything." Before Asha could respond, the backstage speakers crackled to life. "Ladies and gentlemen, please take your seats. The Indigo Collective presentation will begin in 2 minutes." "You should go," Asha told Vivienne. "This isn't your world anymore." Vivienne nodded, accepting the dismissal with surprising grace. At the exit, she paused. "For what it's worth, what you've created here, it's what fashion should have been all along." Then she was gone, swallowed by the crowd outside. "Was that?" Marco appeared at Asha's side, eyes wide. "The past," Asha replied simply. "Now let's show them the future." The lights dimmed in the main tent as Alina Montgomery took the stage to introduce the show. "Fashion has always been about transformation," the Federation president began. "But rarely has our industry itself been transformed so profoundly as in this past year. Today we witness not just new designs but a new philosophy, one that honors tradition while embracing innovation, that values the hands that create as much as the bodies that wear, that recognizes fashion as both art and responsibility." She gestured toward the wings where Asha waited. "Please welcome to the runway the designer who reminded us all what courage looks like, Asha Sharma and the Indigo Collective." The applause was thunderous as Asha stepped onto the runway. She wore her own design, a midnight blue jacket embroidered with constellations by artisans from her grandmother's village, over trousers cut with architectural precision. "Thank you," she began, her voice steady and clear in the hushed tent. "1 year ago, I stood in a different room in this city, being told I didn't belong, that my heritage, my perspective, my very identity had no place in fashion." Phones were raised throughout the audience, recording her words. "Today, I stand before you not as an exception, but as a promise that fashion can be both beautiful and ethical, that tradition and innovation can coexist, that an industry built on exclusion can be rebuilt on inclusion." In the front row, Indira watched with quiet pride as her niece commanded the attention of the world's fashion elite. "Each garment you'll see today carries a story of the artisans who created it, the cultures that inspired it, the future it imagines. And each piece is an invitation to write a new chapter in fashion's history, one where we recognize that true luxury isn't about status or exclusivity, but about meaning and connection." She gestured to the diverse team gathered in the wings, designers, pattern makers, seamstresses, and models representing every continent. "This is the Indigo Collective, not one vision but many, not one voice but a chorus, not just clothes but a revolution stitch by stitch." The music began, models emerged, and Asha stepped back to let her work speak for itself. As the final look, a wedding ensemble that blended traditions from 5 different cultures made its triumphant turn at the end of the runway, the audience rose in a standing ovation. Later, at the after-party held in the transformed atrium of the Indigo Tower, Asha found a quiet moment with her aunt amid the celebration. "Are you happy?" Indira asked, watching her niece carefully. Asha considered the question, looking out over the room filled with people who had been part of her journey, from the Brooklyn alterations shop owner who had given her her first job, to the interns who now looked to her for guidance, to Ria working diligently to earn back trust, to Marco raising a glass in her direction. "I'm satisfied," she decided. "There's still so much work to do, but yes, I'm happy too." Indira smiled, the wisdom of decades in her eyes. That's how you know you're on the right path, when the journey itself brings joy, not just the destination. As if on cue, Alina Montgomery approached, accompanied by representatives from 3 major fashion houses. Asha, these gentlemen are interested in discussing ethical supply chain collaboration. Your transparency app has them quite intrigued. Asha straightened, ready to continue the work of transformation. The simple woman who had once been humiliated at work now owned not just the building, but a vision for the future, one stitch, one design, one conversation at a time. I'd be delighted to discuss it, she said, stepping forward into her power.